his name still sends shivers down the spines of many. The mere mention of his name evokes a sense of dread and horror among those who remember his reign. Idi Amin Dada, the brutal dictator of Uganda, was a man of immense contradiction. He was a figure who could inspire both fear and admiration, often in the same breath. He was a charismatic leader who charmed crowds with his booming laughter. His larger-than-life personality made him a beloved figure to some, even as he orchestrated unspeakable atrocities. But he was also a ruthless tyrant who ruled his country with an iron fist. His regime was marked by a brutal crackdown on dissent, and his paranoia led to widespread purges. Amin's reign was a dark chapter in Ugandan history, marked by widespread human rights abuses, economic turmoil, and international isolation. The country's infrastructure crumbled, and its people suffered immensely. This is the story of his terrifying rule, a rule that left an indelible mark on the nation and its people. Amin's brutality became legendary. His methods of torture and execution were both creative and horrifying, designed to instill maximum fear. He was a towering figure, both physically and in his capacity for cruelty. His imposing presence was enough to intimidate even the bravest of souls. Those who dared to oppose him were met with swift and brutal retribution. His secret police operated with impunity, ensuring that dissent was crushed before it could take root. His regime was responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Ugandans. The exact number of victims may never be known, but the scars left on the nation are undeniable. Many more were tortured, disappeared, or forced into exile. Families were torn apart, and communities were left in ruins. His story is a reminder that power corrupts. Absolute power, as Amin wielded, corrupts absolutely, leading to unimaginable suffering. It's a story of a nation held hostage by fear, a fear that permeated every aspect of life, from the highest levels of government to the smallest villages. And it's a cautionary tale for us all, a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of vigilance in the face of tyranny. Idi Amin was born in Koboko, Uganda, in 1925. This small town, nestled in the northwestern part of the country, was a place of humble beginnings for a man who would later become infamous on the world stage. His exact birth date is unknown, a mystery that adds to the enigma of his early life. This is a common problem for people born in that time and place, where record-keeping was often inconsistent and unreliable. Amin's early life was shrouded in poverty and obscurity. Growing up in a rural village, he faced the harsh realities of life in a developing country. He received little formal education, attending school sporadically, and often having to leave to help support his family. He worked odd jobs to survive, taking on any work he could find, from laboring in the fields to working as a handyman. Even as a young man, Amin was an imposing figure. His height and physical presence set him apart from his peers. He was almost 6.5 feet tall, towering over most of the people around him. He used his size to his advantage, often intimidating those who crossed his path. He joined the British colonial army as a cook, a position that allowed him to escape the grinding poverty of his youth. He quickly rose through the ranks, demonstrating a combination of physical prowess and a ruthless determination to succeed. He was known for his physical strength and his ruthlessness, traits that earned him both respect and fear among his peers. Amin was a skilled boxer, a sport that further showcased his physical abilities. He even became the Ugandan light heavyweight boxing champion, a title that added to his growing reputation. This athletic prowess added to his growing reputation, making him a well-known figure in Ugandan society. He was a man to be feared and admired, a dangerous combination that would shape his future and the future of Uganda. Amin thrived in the structured environment of the military. He excelled in physical challenges and displayed a knack for leadership, albeit a brutal one. He rose quickly through the ranks, gaining notoriety for his effectiveness and his cruelty. Amin was a key figure in the British effort to quell the Mau Mau uprising in Kenya. This gave him a taste for violence and power that would shape his destiny. He returned to Uganda as a decorated soldier. He was a hero to some, a brute to others. Back in Uganda, Amin exploited the political instability. He forged alliances with powerful figures. He used his position to amass wealth and influence. Amin was a cunning strategist. He played different factions against each other. He was positioning himself for something bigger. By 1971, Uganda's first president, Milton Obote, had become increasingly authoritarian. He was wary of Amin's growing influence. Obote saw Amin as a threat. He attempted to have him arrested, but Amin was one step ahead. On January 25, 1971, While Obote was attending a Commonwealth summit in Singapore, Amin seized power in a military coup. Tanks rolled through the streets of Kampala. The radio broadcasted news of Amin's takeover. He declared himself president. The coup was swift and bloodless. Amin promised peace and prosperity. He portrayed himself as a man of the people. Many Ugandans initially welcomed his rule. They were tired of Obote's corruption and repression. They hoped Amin would usher in a new era. They would soon learn the horrific truth. Amin's true nature became horrifyingly clear in the months following the coup. He unleashed a wave of terror. His rule was marked by extreme brutality and disregard for human life. He saw enemies everywhere and ruthlessly eliminated any opposition. Amin's reign was characterized by ethnic purges. He targeted specific tribal groups, seeing them as a threat to his power. The Acholi and Langi tribes were particularly persecuted. Thousands were murdered and many more were forced to flee. Amin's paranoia knew no bounds. He created a climate of fear where no one was safe. His secret police, the State Research Bureau, operated with impunity. They abducted, tortured, and killed suspected dissidents. Their methods were brutal and ruthless. Amin ruled by fear. Section 6. Crushing the economy. Amin's economic policies were as disastrous as his political ones. His decisions were often impulsive and lacked any strategic foresight, leading to widespread economic instability. He expelled Uganda's Asian population in 1972, accusing them of controlling the economy and exploiting the indigenous population. This drastic move was part of his broader agenda to nationalize the economy and redistribute wealth. This expulsion of nearly 80,000 Asians had a devastating impact on Uganda's already fragile economy. The Asian community had been the backbone of Uganda's commercial sector, and their sudden removal left a void that was impossible to fill. Amin's economic mismanagement led to hyperinflation. Prices of goods skyrocketed and the cost of living became unbearable for the average Ugandan. The value of the Ugandan shilling plummeted. Basic necessities became scarce. People found it increasingly difficult to purchase everyday items, leading to widespread suffering. People struggled to afford food and medicine, the healthcare system was in shambles, and malnutrition became rampant, especially among children. The expulsion of the Asians created a void in the business sector that the country could not fill. Many businesses were left without experienced managers, leading to their eventual collapse. Amin's economic policies were driven by a combination of paranoia, greed, and a warped sense of nationalism. He believed that by taking control of businesses owned by Asians, he could redistribute wealth to indigenous Ugandans. He believed that by taking control of businesses owned by Asians, he could redistribute wealth to indigenous Ugandans. However, the lack of experience and knowledge among the new business owners led to widespread inefficiency and corruption. However, his actions had the opposite effect, plunging the country deeper into poverty and chaos. The economy never recovered during his regime, and the scars of his policies are still felt in Uganda today. Section 7. The Fall of Amin. Amin's reign of terror could not last forever. International condemnation grew. His support within Uganda dwindled. In 1978, he made a fatal error. Amin invaded neighboring Tanzania. He attempted to annex the Kagera region. This act of aggression proved to be his undoing. Tanzania, under the leadership of Julius Nyerere, launched a counter-offensive. They were joined by Ugandan exile groups. Amin's forces were no match for the combined might of Tanzania and the Ugandan rebels. They were quickly routed. Kampala fell in April 1979. Amin fled into exile, ending his brutal reign. He left behind a country in ruins. Section 8. Exile and Death. Amin escaped to Libya, seeking refuge with his ally, Muammar Gaddafi. He lived there for several years, still clinging to the delusion that he was the rightful leader of Uganda. However, Gaddafi eventually asked him to leave. Amin was granted asylum in Saudi Arabia. He lived a life of relative luxury, far from the consequences of his actions. He never expressed remorse for his crimes. He continued to claim he was a benevolent ruler. Amin died in Saudi Arabia in 2003. He was buried there. His death brought little closure to the families of his victims. His legacy continues to haunt Uganda. Section 9. Amin's legacy. Idi Amin's rule was a dark period in Ugandan history. His name became synonymous with brutality and tyranny. He left behind a legacy of shattered lives, economic ruin, and deep-seated trauma. His reign is a stark reminder of the human capacity for evil. Yet amidst the horror, there is hope. Uganda has made remarkable progress in the decades since Amin's downfall. The country has returned to democracy. The economy is growing. Ugandans are working to rebuild their nation. The story of Idi Amin is not just a story of a dictator, it's a story of the resilience of the human spirit. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can endure, and it's a testament to the power of truth and justice to eventually prevail.